proverb, I am because we are, is the foundation of the ACBN YouTube channel. Tap in for all of our remarkable content and ecosystem mobilization through the phenomenal practitioners and thought leaders we engage on this channel. In the words of Adrienne Marie Brown, things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered. We must hold each other tight to pull back the veil. Get ready for another amazing ACBN powered interview.
Yeah, so welcome, folks. First day of Black History Month or African Heritage Month or Black Futures Month. And we have a remarkable gathering this dawning. We really appreciate your leadership and punctuality. We have some remarkable leaders that we've assembled today. And I don't want to butcher any bios, so I'm gonna have folks introduce themselves. I'm gonna go first with my brother, Jeff Sear. Go ahead, my friend.
Sure thing, thanks. Kanshi Kwe Ani, Bojo, everybody. Kinu Inene Indigenous, Ottawa and Donjnabu, Manitoba and Donjnaba. My name is Jeff Sear. My traditional name is Eagle Man Leading. I come from my traditional territory is actually in southern Manitoba, what we call the White Horse Plains area, where my family still lives. And I am from Métis and mixed ancestry descent. I live and work and sometimes play every once in a while on unceded Algonquin territory here in Ottawa. And excited to be here. In terms of doing a little bit of a minor bio, I am the co-founder and managing partner of Raven Indigenous Capital Partners. We had a big day yesterday, so we closed our second fund at $100 million, and it was oversubscribed. So it's a pretty important watershed moment. I'm also the CEO of the Raven Indigenous Impact Foundation, and with the foundation, we work on outcomes finance, really at the community level. And if our other funds work at the venture capital level, which is with enterprises, our outcomes finance works at the complex problems facing our people at the community level in Indigenous communities. Yeah, super excited to be here. We can go in more detail about what some of these things mean and what we do. And we are definitely of kindred spirit, heart, and mind with you all in this grouping. It's good to see Ryan again and Wayne and a bunch of others, and a few members of the Raven team, Caitlin, Wahi, and Rebecca are here as well with us, which is exciting to work in solidarity with you all towards having better outcomes for everyone. So
Indeed.
Thanks, Victor. Marcy Cho.
Thank you. I appreciate you. We're going to move on to our elder, Susan Henry. Can you please introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here on the first day of Black History Month. Looking forward to many celebrations during this month. I am Susan Henry, and I'm the Director of Community Impact and Financial Inclusion with Alterna Savings Credit Union. And in my role, I lead our Community Impact team, where collectively our goal is to empower and support members through programs and resources that are specifically tailored to suit the needs of the underserved and underrepresented individual organizations and communities. And our community impact team, it has several areas of focus. The first is our community financial resiliency program, which is around helping to improve the capacity and resilience of the nonprofit, affordable, cooperative, and housing sector. Our award-winning community microfinance program, which provides funding for small business owners and entrepreneurs who are often excluded from traditional financial models. Or financial inclusion and granting programs, where we provide funding for organizations that address related financial inclusion and education within their communities. And our community financial education program, which works to empower our members and community and partners through specific design workshops and resources. So that's a little bit about the work that I'm doing at Alterna that I think fits really well into the topics that we're going to see today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Susan, for your leadership, guidance, eldership, and all that you do on behalf of our community. We appreciate your presence this dawning. We're going to hand it off to our colleague, Tim Caldwell.
Morning, everybody. It's great to be here today. My name is Tim Caldwell. I'm the president of Chandos Construction. We're a purpose-driven national technical builder, leading change in the Canadian construction industry. I'm also a member of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. I didn't grow up in the community, but have been on a very moving and meaningful journey to get reconnected to my roots. I just actually got back from Vancouver Island, where I spent 4 days with some Indigenous elders with the Songhees on the island. It was really, really interesting. We were talking about Indigenous law. Our organization is a strong proponent of social procurement. I worked with Senator Omavar on Bill C-344, which actually died in the Senate, but the spirit of that bill is alive and well. There's over 150 organizations across the country with a collective buying power of about $10 billion a year of construction spend that have made a commitment to put social procurement as about 20% of the selection criteria when choosing contractors. And so that's something that's very interesting to us. We're also the largest B Corp certified contractor in the world. So that gets us some pretty interesting conversations. We have 8 offices, 800 employees. We'll do about 850 million this year. And we're growing. I'm really interested in how an organization can have a positive impact in the world at scale. And so really excited to have the conversation today. Last thing I'd say is the primary tool that we use to measure impact spend is NISTOLink, and Jeff's organization as a major funder of that, I do believe. And so it's a great way for us to demonstrate that we're actually doing what we said we're doing with our customers.
Indeed. Ashe, ashe, ashe. And saying the word ashe in our culture means so let it be. And it's a perfect segue to our colleague, Lisa Arneson, the founder of Ashe. Go ahead, Lisa. You're on mute.
I said, thank you, Victor, and bonjour, and welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Arneson. I am a light-skinned Black woman with purple glasses. I'm wearing a Baltic amber large necklace with just a simple Black dress, and behind me is some art that's blue and white, matches my living room decor. I am here within territory of the Treaty 13, and I am the chair and founder of Ashe Community Foundation for Black Canadians with Disabilities. We are an organization that works across Canada to do we have several strategic priorities, but all of them rest in success under some type of social enterprise, not only for our own organization, but also for our members. We know that our community, persons with disabilities or Black and Indigenous people with disability, have the highest rate of unemployment, employment, and social exclusion in Canada and within our own communities. And our goal is to learn from their voices, and we run everything through that lens, as well as me being a woman with disabilities. And we hope that we will be able to create systems, and that's what SETI's been helping me with, that are fully accessible, including we are launching a Black Accessibility Knowledge Hub. And this is something right now that will be free, with the same look as a fee per service type of model, and then a design on how to build that experience and skills within our own community and build those social enterprise type businesses. Because most people in our community and the organizations across Canada that we audited in one of our capacity building research projects, they might have small businesses, unable to scale up, and they're also committed to all the social issues or the issues that affect their communities. And I believe that if we can find that space in between, we'll be able to really build up the communities of Black and Indigenous peoples with disabilities in control of supporting their own communities and at the same time, their own livelihood. So that's why I'm here as well.
Ashe. Yes, thank you so much, Lise. We're going to hand it off to your colleague, Ryan O'Neill Knights.
Hey, good day, everyone. My name is Ryan Knight, one of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. We work with entrepreneurs of African and Caribbean heritage, really to figure out what stage their business is in, and then help them create a strategy to grow their companies exponentially. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I do run a company called Detailing Nights. We provide mobile waterless car cleaning. So we go to people's houses, their offices, clean their cars on the spot without using water, and we use a plant-based cleaning supplies. And we have our youth entrepreneurship program starting recruitment soon, so stay tuned for that. We teach high school and college students, and even those out of school, how to run their own businesses using a mini version of Detailing Nights. And during Afro-Caribbean Business Network, I'm the general partner for our microloan program. So if you do know entrepreneurs in Ontario from the Black community that need up to $25,000, definitely send them our way. We're trying to follow in the footsteps of Jeff there with the Raven Capital. 100 million, boom. Congrats.
As well, Ryan's also the lead for the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. Do you want to share a bit about that? I mean, the Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Program?
Right. So the federal government did fund the Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Fund. So ACBN is one of 44 organizations across Canada that are Black business supports. And we also have the National Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Conference happening in June. So we'll definitely share that as it develops, but the save the date should be coming out soon. But we also have a study group that brings together these leaders and really shows how to interconnect economics with other themes of the Black community. So justice, health, politics, youth, seniors, women, any theme that is in the Black community, we want to see how economics and empowerment can intersect so we can support. So, hey, looking forward to seeing any of you at those study groups. We do them Tuesday evenings at 6. So, but I can send more info later.
That's so helpful, Ryan. And thank you everyone for introducing yourself. And I'll introduce myself formally. My name is Victor Beausoleil. For many of you that don't know, I am a husband, a father of 4 remarkable children. My wife and I, my better half, and I have 4 children. I'm currently the executive director, or what I'd say the steward of SETSI, which stands for Social Economy Through Social Inclusion. A lot of our work is all things social innovation and all its subsets. So social finance, social procurement, social acquisitions, entrepreneurship, the cooperative movement in Canada, and impact investing. And I'll leave it there because I want to make sure that we can get into this conversation. So I'm going to start primarily with my colleague, Tim, specifically around the work that you've been facilitating at Channels, and just what does solidarity really mean to you? You expressed in one of our calls recently the journey that you just took, and you alluded to that recently. But when we think about the Berlin Conference, the partitioning of Africa, when we think about Canada, the United States, and most colonial lands being built on literally stolen land and free labor, when we think about the Bretton Woods Conference and all monetary policy tied to the dollar, when we think about some of the historical atrocities that's happened, and I don't want to call Black Indigenous communities victims because I don't prescribe to victimhood, but we have been kidnapped from lands across the world, and we've also had our land taken from us in many instances. In terms of navigating the largest beast cert in the world, how do you see solidarity manifesting and being actualized between Black and Indigenous communities to create a sense of liberation, sovereignty, or to create that countervailing power to create some form of economic reconciliation?
Yeah, I'd start out with internally in our organization. So we are 100% employee owned. We have a single class of voting shares for every employee, including carpenters and laborers on the job site. And I think the thing that really describes the culture of our organization is solidarity. So it's this idea of we are here working for each other. The sweat of the labor of our brow does not go to line the pockets of someone in the corner office or a publicly traded entity that has an ownership position. So 100% of our ownership is internal. And so we're here working for each other. And I think that's a very powerful thing. I would rather work for each other than work for the man. And so I would start there. And I think that principle then extends outside of our organization, and that we should be here working for each other with respect to building capacity with Indigenous communities, helping to hire Indigenous and Black professionals in the businesses, and just building capacity wherever we can, and being here for those communities is where I would start.
That's absolutely incredible. And I love that piece around 100% employee ownership. That is a principle that's in all Indigenous communities and Black communities, that concept of cooperative economics and cooperation, the principle of Ubuntu, I am because we are. My colleague John Schnell and Bill Young from Social Capital Partners are actually leading some remarkable work with Senator Colin Deakin, Senator Tony Lafreda, and a few others around employee ownership trusts in Canada. So definitely I applaud the leadership of Chandos. Thank you so much for all those actionable insights, Tim. We're going to move on to our colleague, our elder, Susan Henry. In terms of your work engaging Black entrepreneurs or trying your best to find ways and means to create better economic outcomes for Black, Indigenous, or racialized communities, how has that been? What are some of the wins, challenges, barriers? Because Alternative's been a champion for quite some time, and I believe they're a champion because of the work that you've been doing for, I think, 17 years, but I don't want to date you.
Great. I think some of the work that we've seen in terms of, best practices really is around, when we think of financial mechanisms or instruments which support financial inclusion. I have to talk about the Alternative Savings Community Microfinance Program, because it was designed to address an imbalance in the marketplace. It's been going strong for over 20 years, and it has a primary objective of working within communities to address socioeconomic inequalities by creating opportunities for financial independence. It also looks to break down the barriers to banking for those often excluded from financing. We look at it as an initiative that provides access to products and services, particularly those who face systemic barriers. The program comes with a combination of loans and savings, financial education, and other wraparound supports for entrepreneurs, particularly women, BIPOC, new and racialized Canadians, and low-income individuals. Some of the positive impacts that we've seen from microfinance range entrepreneurs owning their businesses and also to the wider community. The loans help them build and scale their businesses, allow them to increase their income, which we know can bring household stability, access to food, shelter, education, clothing, and asset building. I also would mention some of the lessons learned from microfinance that needs to continue today, and that is around developing things like flexible financial tools for now things like access to housing. So, while we've got the entrepreneurs, we see that there's housing issues within our communities. And so we need to have flexible tools for that. We need to have more flexible lending products. And we also need to think about some investment opportunities. And these are, I think, some of the wins that, we're working on that we will continue to work on.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for all those actionable insights, your vulnerability, and your candor, Susan. We appreciate you. It's a perfect segue to the work that you've been doing, Jeff, for quite some time now around outcomes financing. Elder Susan spoke about flexible financial tools and models, and Raven has developed a slew of remarkable financial instruments and models that has been lauded internationally. Would you love to share some of that and see how we can intersect that between the solidarity that Tim mentioned in terms of channels actually contracting one of the products that you funded?
Yeah, and thanks. And I'm going to apologize now because there's only 40 minutes left, and you gave me the mic. No, just kidding. To talk about my favorite subject. And comments that Tim made and others have made here kind of sparked this. And I mean, we started Raven Capital for the sole purpose of, a racialized capital gap in our community, where mainstream capital wasn't acting in a good way as it interacted with Indigenous communities. And so the original idea was, can we do that ourselves? And of course, you're doing this as well, many of the people on this call. What's really interesting, because what's behind this is not doing venture capital in the mainstream financial way, like a Silicon Valley-esque approach, but one in which we seek to use the tool of venture capital, but modify it so that it works for our people. And that means keeping resources and wealth in the hands of entrepreneurs at first blush. And I'm going to come to outcomes finance in a second, is to keep it in the hands of entrepreneurs so that it has this, exponential effect of generating, an Indigenous economy or community-based economy, because the wealth stays there. And to be honest, the knowledge stays as well. Because one of the things missing inside that is the sort of the investor ecosystem amongst Indigenous people, and sort of the knowledge base that can work across that. And, VC is all about networks too, right? Who you know, how you know, the experience, the wealth of experience, like your auntie or your uncle who has that experience that you can draw on. And I'll turn to a broader thing about the economy in a second. What we realized, of course, and what we were approached with is at the community level. So those instruments are great for businesses, really great. But some of the issues are complex, multifaceted, and require a community level approach. And so our idea on building an outcomes finance tool, which we call a community-driven outcomes contract, it sounds simple. It's supposed to sound like what it is, so that we try to keep the complexity out of it. And so what it allows to happen is, what it really tries to do is, how do you solve problems at the community level? And we've taken on climate and health, the two big issues that we as Raven are looking at within outcomes finance. And it's really to place the community in charge of determining what's the thing that needs to be done. And the theory behind that is those in the community know how to solve the problem. They just need the means by which to do it, right? They're closest to it, they understand it. And this gets around what is sort of paternalistic government funding of 200 years of colonization and determining, oh, this is what you need. And that has turned out to super ineffective programs and services. If they exist, they don't really work very well because they're not actually addressing the thing that needs to be addressed. The second part about that is, for us, I think almost equally important and connects to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, is self-determination in the design and execution of the interventions. So not only does the community get to determine it, but they get to do it and own it. And the community ownership of the intervention is equally important as in its success, or as we like to call the stickiness of the intervention. And here we're talking type 2 diabetes, which is a complex issue, and it's a crisis in our communities, and it's an epidemic. And we're talking about clean energy or Indigenous energy sovereignty on communities, dealing with another crisis in the housing side and way building long-term housing resiliency. Overall, to come back to something that Tim and Elisa said here is that, my thinking is that communities such as ours, Indigenous and your communities, Black communities in Canada and elsewhere, there's an opportunity here to rework and rethink the way that the economy itself actually works. Now, economies are human constructions. We know this, but it doesn't seem to resonate all the way up the chain, where people say, oh, if we don't like how that has an outcome, we can actually build something different to work differently. Kind of goes behind B Corp thinking too. If you can take the corporate model and you can rethink it to actually work differently, you get better outcomes for everybody. Yeah, I don't know if I'm wandering in my thought process here, but if you take donut economics and circular economies and you kind of mash these things together, you get it aligned with Indigenous worldview and how we are all in relationship with each other and we're all connected. So we all need to care about the outcomes that we have and not make decisions that lead to this massive divide between corporate leaders like the Bezos and the heads of banks who have 327 times the income that others who are working for the economy and the real part of the economy, and not draw the wealth out of the bottom 95% to the top percent. And this is a thing that's been going on for 30 years, 40 years in the economy. We're drawing the wealth out of the bottom and it doesn't go back. So it's not circular. It doesn't circulate back. It sits up in share valuations and things like that. Anyways, I'm going to stop.
No, those are remarkable insights. And I think it's important. Our colleague Tim Nash has been doing some great work, but as well, the Oxfam put out a report right after the Davos World Conference, and it spoke to $52 trillion being extracted from the global economy to 1%. But the numbers are even scarier when you look at Canada. And I can share that report to anyone that wants it. Please feel free to put your email in the chat. But with that being said, a lot of what you discussed, Jeff, is around market making, market reform, and market fixing. And what I've seen Raven do is literally build out markets, build out $1 billion Indigenous economy where folks have the ability to engage their own and have access to not just finance, but to organize their economic relationships in a for us, by us model. When I think of the work that Elder Susan Henry is doing as well, similarly, market reform, market fixing, market making. So it's a perfect segue to Ryan. In terms of your work at the Afro-Caribbean Business Network and our remarkable partners at the FACE Coalition, Tiffany Callender doing some great work, literally the only CDFI, one of the strongest entities within the country doing loans for Black businesses, or the Foundation for Black Communities, our brother Liban and Gladys and their colleagues, Craig Wellington at BOF, Dahabo, Black North, and others, the concept of a Beyond Solidarity movement or model. And this came out of a conversation me and Jeff had a few months back. How do Black and Indigenous communities come together and find ways to move just beyond the performative statement of solidarity and actually actioning it? And this is a step 100% in the right direction. In your opinion, Ryan, what are some of the practical ways that we can come together to not always have to do market fixing after a paternalistic or prescriptive model comes from government or from the private sector or philanthropy? What are some of the ways that you think that we can work together in solidarity as communities that in a lot of instances are on the margins or the periphery of the economy?
Yes, and I appreciate that, because one thing that stuck with me during the social impact conference that SETC was able to put on just a couple months ago was an elder speaking about when the Black community is engaging with the Indigenous community, we have to be organized ourselves. It's difficult for us to come to the table and we're disorganized, and then that's going to affect the progress of what our brothers and sisters in the Indigenous community are already doing. So that comes back internally to us, the Black community, being organized. And this is where Jeff is talking about his fund phase. Now the Black community has CDFI, as you mentioned. Now that it's organized, there can be collaboration and it can grow. That didn't exist before. There was no entity in the Black community that could come to the table at that level. So now that it exists, we can move forward. Again, with the organizations themselves, when we talk about the ecosystem, initially we were not organized. So now that we're a bit more organized, I wouldn't say it's like 100% there, but we're moving in the right direction where now we can move as a unit and definitely collaborate better and amplify the work that everyone's doing. A lot of this information came through the research study that we were able to do on the Black labor market assessment and digging into the issues that Black entrepreneurs were having. Using that data now, we can come to the table and really collaborate better than just come to the table saying the Black community needs help and we're disorganized. It doesn't work.
That's very helpful, Ryan. One of my favorite proverbs my father gave me years ago was power attracts the worst and it corrupts the best. And I think that eldership is a huge piece around this work. I'm going to segue to to Liz. In terms of eldership within Black and Indigenous communities, there's such a remarkable consistency and continuity. There is Black folks recognize eldership within our community, and Indigenous communities recognize eldership in their communities. Recently, one of my colleagues at SETSI had to actually travel to an elder's house to drop off sweetgrass and tobacco, and was schooled on, you're actually in this province, and we actually, it's not sweetgrass that we accept, it's tobacco, and we actually learned this from another colleague before. So the importance of eldership is so important because eldership provides governance. And one of the challenges that we have is governance a lot of times in many communities, hence power attracting the worst and corrupting the best. So back to my question around eldership and the connection between eldership and Black Indigenous communities. What's your views, Liz?
I'd like to start because one thing I negated to say is I actually am a business owner of maybe over 20 something years. And my daughter is 22-year-old business owner while going to school, and she has a very large gem business and is she wants to corner the market on being a supplier for African gems, and she's met the miners, the Black owners in African states. And my other daughter also has a business. Everybody's doing social work for the community, and everybody has a business. So what is the eldership? So I'm going to talk about eldership in two ways. Within the Black community, we do have an elder model. And I come through a spirituality model as well. So I have a lot behind me that is not necessarily linked to the Western world, or not linked to even just religion in its state, the Christianity religion. I also have been very fortunate in my lifetime to be brought into family and communities and within spaces where elders are giving of their knowledge. And actually, if you look at Ashe, or if you look at even my business, one elder as Wendy Phillips, and she was our advisor and continues to be an advisor for us as we move through this space. It's a very similar space, I believe, for Indigenous people who have disabilities, and getting access to the groups has become very, very difficult across the board, because as Black people or Indigenous people, we already know, and all this conversation is happening. And then as individuals with disabilities who have been overlooked, passed over, are not included in any of the frameworks in our communities as well, and then experience, anti-indigeneity, racism and Black racism and gender-based violence and all these things within the other society that controls everything, we find ourselves in a very interesting space. And that's why I believe Ashe community over the last 3 years has been able to grow, because we've been fortunate enough to be able to work within Indigenous communities, within Black communities, finding grassroots organizations that are also doing that kind of similar work on race and disability, or Blackness and disability. And we're very, very excited. Just the other day, yesterday, I've met another elder who's out in Saskatchewan, and this think tank was on HIV and AIDS in the Indigenous and Black community. And when I go to these spaces and I see the learnings, the support, and the power in those rooms, makes you think, okay, we can do that in community. We should be able to do this in the social enterprise world for sure. But we also do not have a lot of understanding in our communities. And then if you're a person with disabilities, it's been quite limited. So in our model, we do have a model within Ashe that sets up models for mentorship, elders. I'm considered an elder. I'm older than I look. And we provide mentoring and support, particularly to young people in all aspects. And I'm so delighted to be here, because this is another area that they asked us to support with a group to help them do this. And it's not my expertise, which is why Victor gets called in the middle of the night. Sorry, Victor. And to see what we can do. And now I'm in a space where we can learn from like the Indigenous belief, 7 generations behind and 7 generations ahead. I think that that's very similar to how Black people think as well. And those teachings and those learnings are excellent foundational pieces. Our work is grounded in decolonization, in disability justice, and if you don't know what that is, it's intersectionality, it's cross-movement solidarity, it's interdependence of us as people. There's 10 of them. And it's through the elders, and including, I went to the Ontario Black History Society event on Sunday. Always one of my most favorite events. When you go in the space, you're surrounded by elders that have done this work and continue to do this work as they age. You're in a space where everybody in there is community focused and wants what you want. And it was the opportunity to recharge. It wasn't a big show. It wasn't any of those things. It was our community coming together with people who believe in the values and live the life the way we feel it should be led. And I'm just really grateful for every opportunity that I have to be in spaces, elders, and to be advised and supported through Elder Wendy Phillips, for myself personally and our organization.
I give thanks for all those insights, your candor, vulnerability, and your strength over all these years in terms of pushing us forward as a community elder. And yeah, just give thanks for that response. I'm going to move on to Elder Susan Henry, primarily because when we think about how Indigenous and Black communities organize their economic relationships, there's a model that we talk about, and we use Susu, Kagalis, Hagbaz, partners, hands, and all these frameworks. And I think of, we just did an interview at SETC, part of our When Elders Speak series with Elder Janelle Skerritt, Abena, and her and Elder Carolyn Shanez Hussein put out the Banker Ladies. And when I think about the practical application of economic development and community economic development and microfinance, Susan's always my go-to. So in terms of your, not just ambition, but your leadership skills over multiple decades in this space, Elder Susan, are there elders, aunties, uncles, folks that inspired you to be able to leverage your talents and your abilities to have this level of passion, vigor for our community around this ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I think, I first have to give thanks to my ancestors. And I give thanks to my family, in particular, my mom, the journey she took from the Caribbean to come to Canada, the struggles that, she faced as a new immigrant to Canada, and not having the support when she sort of came here to achieve her goals. I also thought of, where my passion came from was, and Liz talked about her family being entrepreneurs, ensuring that my families were entrepreneurs, because that was one of the ways in Canada that Black people had probably the strongest opportunity to survive. And, it was challenging in other corporate and organizational structures, particularly when I look at some of the challenges that I saw Black men face. And I started my own entrepreneurial journey with my husband and partner, because I understood that was the best route possible, for him to, how do I say this? To be the man that he wanted to be and do it in a way that had humility, that had, other factors that made him proud as a person. And I wanted to carry that through as my passion in my career. And I'm fortunate enough to be working for an organization that recognizes that holds the value of equality and equity very seriously, also the values of collaboration, integrity, and respect. And, this is the reason why I'm at Alterna, why I'm pushing this platform and the platform of, self-ownership, entrepreneurship, and having the seat at the table to make that happen. But, we don't do this in silo. We do it in collaborations with other elders and our community leaders and partners. That's really important in getting their perspective in how we move forward in the work that we're doing.
Ashe, thank you so much. I really appreciate all those insights, Susan. I'm going to move on to Tim Caldwell, primarily because Tim, every time we have a conversation on the phone, I'm inspired. Not just by the $850 million your company generates, but more about the way your mind conceptualizes innovation. I remember we spoke a couple of weeks ago about some work you're doing in the new year. I won't talk too much about it because I'm not sure how public it is yet, but that innovative spirit that you've had in leading the channels, where did that come from? And what role did elders play in that framing?
Yeah, you know what? I think I can't take credit for all of it, but I have an interesting childhood story, and it's probably a story for a different day. But that environment basically taught me, and I'll say that I was homeschooled and I didn't go to didn't go through a traditional school system. The first time I set foot in a classroom was when I went to the University of Alberta and stepped foot in a classroom with 600 people in it. So I was kind of like free range, for lack of a better term, and that teaches you to not care about conforming and fitting in. I think the education system really forces kids to do that. And I have this kind of like, well, who died and made that a rule kind of way of being. And so that kind of pushes the agenda internally. Now, I am blessed in that our organization, also before I joined it, I started with Shandos when I was 17, turning 18. I've been here for 22 years. But even before I was there, we were an organization that was willing to try something and fail and dust ourselves off and move forward and learn from it. So I've been blessed that I can operate in that sort of an environment. One of the things that I have learned over the years, particularly being a relatively young character, maybe this is a few years ago, but I'd get on the soapbox and I'd thump my chest about, well, we got to be doing this, we got to be doing that. What about this thing? And everyone's like, sit down before you hurt yourself, kind of a thing, right? And the way that I've led in the organization is through, I would say, sales, frankly. So if we can get a customer to be excited about a thing that is social innovation, and we can create a demand for that, all of a sudden the whole organization has to do the thing. We're not doing the thing because it's the right thing to do. In many instances, it is the right thing to do, but we're also designing the system so we get paid for doing the right thing. And it allows you to scale it so much quicker, so much faster. So an example of that is there's this delivery method called integrated project delivery that we championed in Canada. It's the most collaborative way you can deliver construction projects. I think it's a deeply Indigenous way of doing things. Decision-making is collective with the entire project team. And you can involve elders and community leaders, and there's a whole thing there. But anyways, we started to market this and we created demand for a thing that didn't exist in the Canadian market. And 7 years ago, there was a couple $100 million of projects that were done this way. Today, there's $3 billion. We probably spent $5 or $6 million promoting it across the country through various means. And we won $2.5 billion of the $3 billion. So that sort of let's poke the market and create demand where there was none is really how we come at things from an innovation standpoint.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. I have one more question for the panelists, and then we're going to go to call to actions. And that's Jeff Sear. Jeff, my friend. Our journey has been remarkable since I've met you, and your insights on Indigenous eldership is beautiful because you use the same term I use. You actually called your wife your better half. And my wife is definitely my better half. And I know that your wife was instrumental in your journey around eldership in it. So I'd love for you to share your insights on eldership within Indigenous communities.
Yeah. First of all, talk about the biggest untapped resource that we have, as a population is our elders. They're, infinitely learns wisdom from generations to generations that sometimes, we forget about. And I remember, helped create an Indigenous Innovation Summit conference years back, and with Justice Sinclair at the time, we were talking about innovation, and one of his comments was that sometimes innovation is not the new shiny thing; it's bringing old ways back and using them in new ways to kind of act in a human way. Kind of what Tim talked about in terms of having a construction design process that actually looks and feels different just by doing things traditionally. But when it comes to elders, and we can talk about solidarity in a minute, because Wendy Phillips is my elder. She was over here for dinner with her husband a couple weeks ago. And we do sweats and ceremony together, and she advises our work as well at times. So I think I would say, yes, my wife is a very important part of my journey, because I think, like Tim described, the way that I kind of look at it is, we need to build markets where there's not. Most of the problems that we see are actually market building opportunities if you can kind of innovate and come to it in a good way. So that's why we created Outcomes Financing Tools and do the Raven Impact Funds. Elders are central, and actually before we started Raven, where the idea came from was actually an elders gathering that we held in the Muskokas. Someone else was holding it, but it was a bunch of Indigenous elders there, where we talked about concepts of growth, economic growth, measurements of things like GDP, and what are our values and what do we value in society, and how does that drive how you construct your business or your interaction or what you want to do. And it helped us conceive of how Raven could be different in how we do things and innovative. And today, I mean, what we do at Raven now is we construct relationship agreements. So we don't do MOUs and we don't do things like that. We're in a relationship together. And as part of those relationship agreements, we're like, okay, so we need to make sure that we have center-placed elders, not side-place them, but center-place their knowledge and wisdom. How do we interact with our elders in a way that respects their time, because they're usually overworked and underpaid? How do we pay elders like professional consultants, as opposed to this minor per diem per day? So we start thinking about our ways of engaging. And if, it's part of my own journey, as you said, Victor, kind of just learning deeper ways of knowing and understanding that our people have, at times forgot or lost or overtaken by a traditional education system in many ways. And I was educated in a very traditional education system, and relearning the connective tissue between things. So for Raven, elder and eldership plays a key role in what we do. And we're probably going to hard bake that into our corporate structure very soon. We'll come out a little bit with an announcement on how we're going to do that, so that on an ongoing basis we have what I call community responsibility through the elders as well. What are you doing and why are you doing that? And you can take big and difficult questions. And I'll give you an idea of a difficult question. Should we work with organizations, companies, and or foundation involved in heavy oil extraction? You got surprisingly different answers from different elders, meaning you can't speak, can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. You can't drive a car, get on an airplane, and then say you won't work with oil extraction. So you need to find a more nuanced and sophisticated approach to how you're going to work together, if you are, and why you're going to do it. So that's the way elders, this wisdom of okay, let's be honest here, folks, the economy we live in. And try to find ways of doing things better. And normally my approach is not to yell at it, it's to work with it, modify it, change it, and, you know, kind of do the intrapreneurship, I think some people have tagged it as, inside organizations as well. Hopefully those comments are helpful, Victor.
No, those are remarkably helpful. And as you know, at SETC, we always begin things and start things on time. So we're not going to have time for call to actions, but we do have time for I am statements. So I'd love for you to all, I'm just going to go one by one. An I am statement is something simple, and I'll start and I'll give you the demonstration. Victor Beausoleil, Steward, Executive Director of SETC, and I'm eternally, infinitely grateful for this opportunity to share this space with you all. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Susan.
Great. I am internally grateful, just like you, Victor, for being here today, for being here on Black History Month, the beginning, to honoring our ancestors and our families and our communities. And, you know, from a personal perspective, you know, I am blessed that I have a seat at the table, and it's a continuous passion to make sure that others within our communities also have that room and space. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to hand it off to our colleague, Ryan O'Neill Knights.
Much appreciated. Always enjoy these conversations. I'm feeling blessed, but also feeling productive, but not overwhelmed. So it's an interesting space to be in. 2023 is a year of focus. So Jeff, definitely gonna reach out to you for some tips on how to raise for our fund, because hey, we are inspired by the work that you do. And definitely Tim, the construction space is so vast and it's not even a trend. We're always building. Would love to learn from what you're doing. So again, thank you to SETC for putting on these panels. This is just the first one. I'm looking forward to the rest of Black History Month. It's gonna be so full. My heart is full. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for your leadership as always. We're going to hand it off to our colleague, Lisa.
I am proud of who we are. I am proud. I am driven by what we can do. And I am blessed to go home to Jamaica next month and be with my Maroon family. And this is such an important conversation because I'm going to be with the elders, and it's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your leadership. We're going to hand it off to our colleague, Tim.
I'm blessed to be part of this conversation, and I am hopeful and inspired. I see so much positive change in these areas. And I think some great things are about to happen.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Jeff.
Thanks, everyone. First of all, I'm honored and blessed to be invited in. So thank you, Victor and company, and to sit with such amazing people at the start of Black History Month, and all my respect and admiration for you all. And then as an action statement, I am gonna work harder to lift this solidarity space and action it on behalf of all of our peoples, and make this continue to make this a robust engagement that leads to sort of practical outcomes for us all and for change. And last but not least, put out a teaser that, you know, in the fall, we're likely going to host an Outcomes Finance Summit and send out an invitation to you all. So looking forward to it.
Incredible. We give thanks. We give thanks to all our partners. I'm powered by Foundation for Black Communities, our partners at ACBN, the FACE Coalition, the Black Business Professionals Association, the Afro-Canadian Contracts Association, Atkinson, Startup Canada. There's so many. The Canadian Community Economic Development Network and their great work. Thank you so much, all of you. Greatly appreciate you. Have a remarkable day.